Well, hey, how are you? This is Aron McKay with Bird Be Gone. Today we are back with another installment of Ask an Expert, and we are joined by Jeff Watts and Chris Fields. How are you gentlemen doing?
Another day with you and Chris is another day in paradise, man.
Why did you just say what I was going to say, Jeff?
Wow.
Another day.
I feel the love, I really do. Not sure if it's genuine, but okay.
You're in Seattle, I can get away with it.
There you go.
Seattle, man, that's right near the ocean. And isn't there like a world famous fish district up there? And I'm thinking about
Segue
birds.
going in here.
Yeah,
Segue
feeling a
going
segue. It's just bubbling.
Wow,
up
that
on
was
the
that was
inside.
really smooth, Aaron. Nice.
That's why we invited you today, Chris.
There's a lot.
Wait, aren't
of,
you
there's
guys
a
in
lot of
California
seagulls.
by the coast?
We are, yeah. But I have seen some seagulls at that fish market. So today we are talking about seagulls and basically the basics of them. So if you're new to bird control and you are in an environment maybe around the ocean, you're around a large body of water where seagull activity happens on a consistent basis, this is a great place for you to start. So who wants to jump us into the topic of seagulls and maybe why they are unique birds to try to deal with when they are engaged in pest activity? So seagulls.
Well, seagulls create a nice challenge, not only their size, they're a seabird, obviously. So the main difference, I think, is they don't require that shelter to nest.
Yeah.
So you'll find them on those large flat rooftops. That's kind of mimics their natural habitat, which is rocky, sandy beaches, right?
Yeah.
So it's not going to be up underneath those canopies where you need to net off and everything like that. These birds are going to sit right out in the open. So that makes it a challenge. Obviously, they're a protected species, so that makes it a challenge as well. On ledges, rooftops, everything like that. All of our ledge products are going to work awesome. We can talk about that more, but for nesting seagulls seem to be the biggest challenge we pose.
Yeah, and you mentioned it in passing about the seagulls' tendencies to be a little bit more aggressive, maybe even particularly when they are nesting, or in my personal experience, or maybe you guys have some stories about seagulls being aggressive when food is involved. So there's always a fun story. Any fun stories around that?
Yeah. I was at an amusement park down in San Diego, and just having a good time in the food court there. And seagulls all over the place, swarm in the area, and just a small child, maybe 4 or 5 years old, just having a great time eating their chicken tenders there, and a seagull just swooped right down, grabbed it right out of their hand, and they do not care when there's food. When they're, obviously when they're protecting a nest, but when they see a great food source and they feel emboldened in an area, they will come and just grab the food right out of your hand if you let them.
Yep. Yeah, I happen to live right near the beach, and we spend a lot of time as a family down there. And if you're not actively eating, the food is covered up and not accessible. Because if you walk 5 feet away from where you're hanging out as a family, those birds will literally walk right up and steal that food. So seagulls are larger, they're heavier, they're more aggressive. And I mean, I know we mentioned kind of the food sources and things like that, but where are we typically seeing pest seagull behavior?
Well, they're scavengers, right? First and foremost, they're scavengers. So obviously they're seabirds, so you find them along the coast, but also inland a little bit more at landfills. Now you're seeing more in outdoor dineries and stuff like that, where people are eating. Obviously, they used to line up at our high school all the time, just waiting for lunch hour to come. They know they're opportunists, right? They come and wait for that food to be dropped.
Yep.
Stadiums. You talked about San Diego down at SeaWorld earlier, Chris. Mm-hmm. Go to a Padres baseball game down there.
Yep.
7th inning or so. Those birds know when the game's almost over. I mean, well, the Padres are playing. It's probably first or second inning. I'm sorry about that. But anyways,
they're better this year, Jeff. But
they'll come into the stadium. Well, not now with COVID and everything like that, but they'll start to come in the upper decks and just start working their way down and finding that food source.
Yeah, that's actually a famous thing up at the San Francisco. The Giants baseball stadium is that is famous. So you get news stories about it. Seventh inning rolls around, seagulls come in the outfield, or if it's a long game, they'll start coming in earlier, and that's and also you mentioned earlier, but where you're going to see seagulls, you see them a lot on the large flat rooftops, the big box stores with the parapet walls. Around the big flat rooftops, they like to get right up against that parapet wall. It gives them shelter from the wind. They don't necessarily need the cover, but they get nice shelter from the wind and are able to nest there and get their eggs stable there.
And they're left alone up there, unless the
Yep.
maintenance guy goes up there and he gets attacked.
Right.
Exactly.
We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
I've
They are
been
not
up on the rooftops where they told me to grab a bat because they don't want to.
Yeah.
You have a problem if you're carrying a bat
Exactly.
up there. That's the kind of customer I want, the one that's carrying a bat. All right.
Right.
So outside of a bat, let's say you're a pest control operator, building maintenance provider, or wildlife control operator, and you're walking into your first seagull situation. How would you recommend that individual step into that situation? What are they looking for, and what are the primary things or questions they want to ask their customer?
Well, I think first off, you want to know whether or not they're nesting or they're just perching out in the open looking for food and predators, like most birds would. If they're perching out in the open and they don't they don't have anywhere where they can nest or anything like that, then you can go with the ledge products like the spikes or the flat track or the SpectrumV, something of that nature, bird wire even. But if you're coming up against a situation where they do have that little bit of wind protection and they are nesting, you're going to want to know that, because those ledge products will not necessarily work in that situation, especially on a big flat rooftop. You've got a lot of area, and something like spikes or track or something is just not going to be feasible to cover all of that.
Yep.
You got to get up there. I mean, you might have been called out there because the gulls are sitting up on the edge of the roof or the peak of the roof, making a big mess, dropping shells down the side of the building, or just crapping all over a pitched roof. But if you go up there thinking, ledge products, and you get up on the roof and realize they're nesting up there, they're just going to fly over your ledge products and still they're not going to leave the area. So
right.
it might be a dual pronged attack type of deal. We have to eliminate the nesting plus put some ledge products, get them off that ledge as well.
Yep. And outside of some of the ledge products that we've mentioned, I know, Chris, you kind of went down a list really, really quickly. You mentioned bird wire, you mentioned spike, you mentioned jolt. What are some other products pest control operators and wildlife operators, facility guys have at their disposal to help treat an existing seagull situation?
Well, as we mentioned, with the spikes and the track, gel, the SpectrumV, you've got that where they're just perching out in the open. You want to look at the plastic spikes. Stainless is great right on the coast. They'll work great, but if you have situations where you can use the plastic spikes, those are great as well because they are very rigid. Seagulls have the webbed feet, so they can't really manipulate their feet around them, and it's very difficult for them to perch on those. As far as where you've got them on the big open rooftops, depending on how large that rooftop is, you could use something like the bird netting. You can use the 2-inch pigeon netting. You'd have to kind of tent it up in the middle. You don't want them landing on that netting, but you could do 2-inch netting, raise it up a little bit, maybe with some support poles or something of that nature, and do that over the rooftop to keep them from nesting in there. Or there's another solution with called the Gull wire. A lot of people will use stainless steel wire. They will basically span this stainless steel wire along the length of the roof. I guess it really depends, but I think it's about every 4 feet or so. And you can do it in a grid pattern, or you can just do it right across. And the reason that works for seagulls is they're unique in that when they come into land, they are gliding in, so they have a full wingspan when they're coming into land, and they do not want to hit their wings on the wires. That type of system works well for gulls. It's labor intensive, and it's obviously not cheap to do, but it is effective.
Yep.
Well, the only thing I would add to that is, Chris had the grids pretty small at 4 feet. I've seen him push it out further, 6, 10 feet even, on center. But it's not only that they don't want to get clipped coming down, they also are worried about they want a way to get out also. So they really don't. The larger the bird, the less they like things above them, type of deal. We can talk about turkey buzzards and stuff like that. On the power, they don't like those upper decks above them. So that's why they want to be up on top. Gulls are the same way. If they have to worry about navigating through that grid system, they're just going to avoid that area altogether. And you are going to be a lot more successful with that grid wire system, a gull wire system, before they nest in that season, right? So if they've already nested, their babies can't fly and everything like that, they're going to be more determined to get around that system. So if you can knock them out before they nest, you're going to have much more success with that type of system.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, if you take your kids to zoos, a lot of times you have the arm span things where the kids can stand up and see how wide their arm span is. Seagull on average, I think, has about a 7-foot wingspan. So getting around that 10-foot on center for the gull wire really discourages them from going into areas because of the risk of them clipping their wing either on the way in or the way out.
And Chris's gulls are a lot bigger than our gulls down here.
Yeah.
San Diego is much smaller than, the further north, the larger the birds get. Okay. We got our customers up in British Columbia, man. These birds are very, very big. Those are the ones you start seeing, like the ones in England or Europe, where they're actually eating rodents.
Yeah.
You ever see those? I know, Chris, that are stealing your French fries and chicken crispers. These birds are walking around eating rats and small dogs. I mean, these things are pretty aggressive.
Yeah. Yep.
The further north you get.
And there are a couple other products that are regularly used with seagulls that we haven't quite mentioned yet. One is on kind of the audio deterrent kind of spectrum of the product offering we have, and the other one would be lasers. I'd be happy to chat about lasers here in a minute, but does one of you guys want to talk a little bit about the Bird Chase Supersonic?
Yeah, I mean, the Bird Chase Supersonic, it's not really a product you're going to want to use where you've got a lot of gulls or if they're nesting, obviously, because they have a very strong desire to be there, if there's a good food source or, whatever's the case. But if you've got a situation like a very large area to cover, a landfill or, just somewhere like a big rooftop where, maybe they're just hanging out, but they're not.
Marinas even, Chris.
Yeah, marinas as well. Yeah, if you're not, if they don't really have the opportunity to nest, that Supersonic will cover up to an acre's worth of area. You can add speakers on it to cover up to 5-6 acres worth of area, and it has a gull setting on it, so it'll put out distress calls for gulls. It'll put some predator calls in there as well, but mostly distress calls, and just let them know that it's not a great area to be in. And in that type of situation where they don't have a great reason to be there, they're just hanging out, the Supersonic can do a good job.
Yep, it's good.
As far as other products go, obviously the ledge products I love. Besides the nesting birds, we talked about netting and gull wire system for nesting birds, but non-nesting birds. The Bird Jolt Flat Track, obviously, I love that product.
Yep.
Spikes and wires around the perimeter. But landfills, Chris, you mentioned landfills. You have the propane cannons as well, and then the lasers for those large open spots where you're outside of town, where you can get away with a loud boom or a laser that you're gonna share with us, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when it comes to lasers, they are highly effective on seagulls. I've personally seen it move large groups of seagulls out of an area. And oftentimes when I'm having conversations with people that they're hearing about lasers and bird control for the first time, they automatically envision taking that laser beam and shining it right on the poor little eyeballs of the seagull. That's not the goal. The way lasers work is that you shine the laser projection on a surface, and the bird sees that approaching laser projection as a potential predator, and it moves off. And with seagulls, lasers are highly effective, and there are even for larger industrial settings like landfills or refineries. I've seen them used at. There are automated versions of the lasers that can kind of sweep an area, a larger area, in unpredictable patterns that keep birds unsettled, specifically seagulls unsettled, and not wanting to spend a lot of time in that space. Any other final comments on seagulls, or places where you've seen service providers go wrong when trying to treat a seagull related issue?
No, the only issue I usually have guys come across is one, if they're nesting birds, they can't, the birds, the young can't fly, right? So they're going to be more aggressive, but also refuse to leave that area. And obviously there are ways, if it is causing a hardship or property damage, you sometimes can get permits to remove eggs or birds for extreme cases, type of deal. So I would just be careful with disturbing an active nest just because they are a protected species.
That's huge. How about you, Chris? Anything to add?
I think it's something that Jeff mentioned earlier, but when you've got the birds on the large rooftops, a lot of people think that they can just cover the perimeter and they're going to be okay with that, with spikes or track or something like that around the perimeter. But you really need to make sure you know the problem and address it if they are nesting up there. So that's the most common thing that I see.
Oh, yeah, I know we're almost wrapping things up here.
Yeah.
But we didn't really talk too much about parking lot lights or even the boating industry in the first place. If we talk about those, we can't forget things like the bird spider. As far as a movable, product that covers large flat areas where we don't want to put spikes and all that other stuff all over. The spider is a really great option for boat owners and even those parking lot structures.
Yeah, the common use case in a marina is that bimini top or that top kind of fabric over the boat. Birds like to hang out in those spaces and just eat and defecate everywhere, ruining the boat. So bird spiders are a great product. So I appreciate you bringing that up because we
good catch, Jeff. Hopefully we have a boating podcast coming up soon, right?
Right.
That's a whole different issue. Yeah, a whole different topic.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, awesome, guys. Appreciate you spending the time today. If as a listener of the podcast, as a subscriber of the podcast, if you're walking into your first job with Seagulls and you need help, don't hesitate to give us a call. We're happy to spend some time with you, talk through all of the things that influence the outcome of that job for you, because we want to make sure you're successful. Appreciate the time today, Jeff. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks.
And we'll see you guys
next time.
All right, see you.
Talk to you later.